Hi there. I'd like to introduce Class 4 of 6 Intermediate Photoshop classes presented by OCAD University Continuing Studies. Today, we're going to look at image source, selections, masking, type an image, typography, filters, and layer styles. So for this process, I've given you two images that you can work with me, and then you can choose your own. To start with, I'm going to be introducing making a poster. It's going to be for print, so it's going to be 11 by 14, 300 DPI, and CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, is going to be the color mode that we're working in. So here is my 11 by 14 file in Photoshop, and I'm using this as a container, and I'm going to drop my images or place the images into this file. So again, finding an image on the internet or from your telephone or from a scanner or from a disk, or if someone gives you an image, it's a good idea to take a look at the photo's image size to begin with. And here is a page from Google where I'm looking up portrait as my query, and I've opened up the tools for size, and I've zoomed down to larger than, and I'm going to choose something like 4 megapixels, 6 megapixels. So I've sourced an image. Here's the image, and this is the image that I've shared with you on the canvas. And I'm viewing the image in a new window, and I'm going to drag and drop the image to my desktop. So it's going to be to the desktop, or you can drag and drop the image directly into Photoshop. Sometimes that will work. I've found that with Photoshop it usually works. With Illustrator, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So you either drag and drop the image into your new file and resize, or drag it to the desktop and open with Photoshop, or copy and paste the image to a new file. However you get it in there, get it in there. So here, I'm going to check the image size first. So this image is 10.98 by 11.371, 240 pixels per inch. So full size for the 11 by 14 means that I have to make it just slightly bigger, which is okay. It's recommended that you use 300 DPI at the size you want your image printed at, but you can get away with all the way down to 150 pixels per inch, but I wouldn't recommend going lower than like 250, 200 maybe. It all depends on what the paper is that you're printing on, what the substrate is, and however many other like things you do with the photograph, if you're adding textures, etc. So a good kind of key to remember is 300 DPI, but it all depends on how you're printing this. Say okay, and it looks like here I'm changing, upping it to 300 with resample off, just to show you that the image can be at 300 DPI, but it's going to be 8 by 9, right? So it's a little small for what we want. And here I'm going to be selecting the background. I'm going to select the background color with color range, and select with color range is going to open up a panel, and I'm going to be able to use an eyedropper to go to one of the pixels that exemplifies the color that I'd like to start the color range selection from, and then have Photoshop select all the colors in that range all across the image, like everywhere in the image. So it's kind of a good tool to use if your colored background is a different color than what else is going on in your image. If you have a person wearing a green shirt and they're sitting in front of a green screen, color range is going to select the green screen and the green shirt. So we have to be a little careful about how we make selections in Photoshop. In any case, the color range selection, it looks like it worked pretty good for the image, and it made the selection of the background. And now I can either mask out the background by inverting that selection, because remember, if I click on mask right now, it's going to mask out the fellow. It's not going to mask out the background. So I need to invert the selection in order to select what I want to select to eliminate or to mask out. So here I'm going to select inverse to invert the selection. So now the selection is inverted, so you can see there's no running ants around the outside. So that means that just the bearded fellow is selected. And now if I want to refine the edge, this is an image from an early version of Photoshop CC, so you will not see the select refine edge. Simply put, Photoshop updated the refine edge, so it's still calling this process refine edge, it's just not in the drop down select anymore. We simply click to create a mask, and then we can go into the mask by double clicking on the mask to refine the edge. And I'll open up Photoshop CC and show you. This is, again, in Photoshop CS6 and moving into the early version of Creative Cloud, so you can see that we're in Creative Cloud here on the pictures of the PDF. Refine Edge had its own dialog box, but now it's a complete window that you get to refine your edge inside of. The same options are available. You can look at your image on a white background, on a black background, on the layers that are below as a selection. You can also see the mask that's under view. You can use edge detection to get rid of some of the areas that should be eliminated in the mask. So because I selected the green background from the photograph and I masked it out, Photoshop understands that I want to eliminate green. I want to eliminate that green background. So anywhere that Photoshop can, process that there are green pixels, it's going to try and mask them out to help me with my mask. So here I am using the edge detection brush. So I'm clicking and pulling around the edge of my selection, and Photoshop is going to refine the edge of that selection. So you can see as soon as I color with the brush isn't really painting anything. It's painting an area, but it's not painting with a color. It's targeting in on the area that I want the edge to be refined on. So I'm just going to pop over to Photoshop and, oh hello, here he is. I've started him already. So we're going to get rid of one of these masks, or maybe I'll just duplicate this layer. So I'm going to press Command J and I'm going to turn off a couple of these layers, and I'm actually going to drop that mask in the trash. And I don't want to apply it, so I'm going to go back. Drop it in the trash, but I don't want to apply it. Just delete the mask. Okay, so here we have our fellow, and I think I'll hide these layers so that you don't have to look at them while I'm working. So there, we'll just hide them in a group. Let's shove that group down there. Okay, so I have my image, and of course, image size. We'll take a look at how big this image is. 10.98 by 11 by 371, 240. So exactly what I was using in the PDF. And again, I'm going to go into making a selection and refining the edge of the selection, and I'm going to have that selection, I'm going to turn it into a mask, and then when it's masked out, that background's masked out, you'll see that the yellow layer below will be visible. So first things first, I can either use the lasso tool to make this selection, I can use the quick selection tool, I can use the magic wand tool. Here I'll try this one first. So I'm going to make that brush bigger, and I can either go to the brush drop down menu here and make it larger, as you can see, or I can use the bracket tool. So here I am clicking the bracket tool to make it bigger, and I'm going to make a selection with that quick selection tool. And you can see that the quick selection tool picked up some of the areas of his hair that I didn't want to select, right? So in congress with that tool, I'm going to press Shift and use the lasso. So I'm just going to make a kind of an easy selection over that hair, and it's not going to be very refined because I'm I'm going to get Photoshop to refine it for me. There we go. So I want this stuff selected here. And here. And I want to see some of his hair. Okay. Fix that up a little bit. So that's me pressing Command on a Mac. I believe it's Command and Alt on a PC keyboard. I'm working on a PC keyboard. Okay, so we have the selection. We want to invert the selection because if I mask now, we see that he disappears. Oh goodness, I missed some of his hair, some of his shirt. So I'll go back in time and we'll pick up this shirt. Okay, so again, boop, he disappears. Command Z is go back in time or undo. Inverting the selection, select inverse, and then mask. There we are. And that's horrible, isn't it? Well, we need to refine that edge. So I don't want to do it by myself because that's like way too much work. Look at this. I want to refine the edge. I want to get rid of this green, but like it's going to take forever to do that unless Photoshop does it for me. So Smart Radius and Radius, you can see that that helps slightly, right? Remember I said choose the brush and brush on the edge of the selection. So I've chosen, and I'm going to click and hold here, or just hold for a second, so you can see Refine Edge Brush Tool, Quick Selection Tool, and Brush Tool. So I've got the Refine Edge Brush, and I'm just going to start painting, and look what it does. It gets rid of that green that I don't want to see. This is awesome. Look at that. This is adding to the mask. And I can see that there's a little green in here. So I just go like that. And whoa, that's awesome. And if you don't understand how awesome this is, let's take a look at this on black. Or, sorry, black and white means mask. So it's pretty great. This is awesome. My mask is black. Black conceals, white reveals. And I can see that there's some trouble in here. So, like, if I use this mask, the area where black is seen at the top of his head, I'm going to see some of that green background that he's sitting in front of in the image. That's a little bit too much. So I'm just going to paint onto my mask and paint some of this stuff out. What I'm really trying to do for the edge detection and for making a mask that looks good, I actually want to see the hair around this fellow, like the flyaway parts of the hair. I want to see it when I composite this person into a new background. Say okay here, and you can see some of my painting. It got a little close to the edge, so I'll Command Z, and I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to use the edge detector. I'm going to make sure I'm looking at the, maybe on white. I'm going to just paint in a little bit here. Refine the edge, find that edge, find the edge, there we go. And edge detection, Smart Radius, turn it on, and move that slightly over. And that looks pretty good. There are other refinements, so if you want the edge to be smoothed out, if you want there to be a feather on the edge, so you can see that that mask is going to feather the edge. So if you want them to fade into the background for whatever reason, contrast, see that. Not really doing us too many favors. Shift edge in or out. See how more of that green is showing up and then less of him is showing up. So we don't really want to do that. We'll leave it at 0. So this is exactly what the edge detection dialog box used to look like, more or less. It was a little shorter. It did have the brushes sitting in the panel, but you can see that we've got a whole new, like almost a new screen. So we're seeing the image inside of a whole screen. We've got the brushes and some of the selection tools over in the corner, and this is like a little toolbar. It's the edge detection toolbar or refine edge toolbar. So it's how we work on a mask. So if I say okay with, right, and decontaminate colors, this is awesome. Decontaminate colors is going to try to decontaminate the greens. So I hope you can see this. It's really subtle, but when I turn it on, it's trying to get rid of the green, and I can see there's a little bit in here that's not quite. It's not great, right, in this area, because I can see through his hair to the green background. I'm going to take a look at that mask. So that's in here somewhere. Let's move this guy over and go back to on white. Look at that, it's right there. But wow, you can't really. Okay, I'll just probably have to darken that up by painting some hair into the area. In any case, I'll just go back to on layer. So this is what the image is going to look like if I reveal the layer below. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of work on the background, so it's not going to be so flat. So this is pretty good. It's not great. You can still see that there's a little bit of green in his hair. I mean, it's not the most perfect colored background for this gentleman. I might want to change the color so that it's not as noticeable. And of course, we'll zoom out a little bit and you can really see. So some areas of this refine edge of the mask worked really well, and then there's some areas that, he has a little bit of a glow. So I might want to kind of mask that out with a hue and saturation adjustment layer. But for now, this is pretty good. So I'm just going to say new layer with layer mask as the output to, and say okay, and show you that Photoshop gave me a copy of my image, and the mask that I initially made is still here, right? This one is new layer with layer mask. This is the new mask, and if I press shift, it turns the mask on and off. So you can see what he initially looked like, and this is what he looks like in a new background. And if I press, I don't want to select it, this is what the mask looks like. So imagine trying to paint that yourself with Quick Mask, or try to lasso each one of those hairs. It's really hard. So it is actually worth it to make a initial mask. So make a selection with the lasso tool, or with the quick selection tool, or even with select color range. So that was in the PDF. Selecting with color range, and I'll show you how to do that in a sec. Make the mask and then refine the mask, refine the edge of the mask. So I'll go back to what he looks like, and then, creating a background that'll work. You can see that it's got a lot of green on the edges. So I might want to just decontaminate this whole area, because it's pretty green. If he's on a different color, you won't be able to see it, right? So you're not going to be able to see it unless I composite him, try and composite him into a color background that doesn't have much else going on other than color, and you'll be able to see the green. But if I composite them onto blue, purple, pink, fuchsia, or red, you won't be able to see it. So in essence, we can use the image in combination with something that will work, or we can go in and I'll make this a white background for now. And I can go in and I can decontaminate just this area by, it's kind of not decontaminating, I'm just going to add an adjustment layer for hue and saturation, no, color balance. I think I'll use color balance. And I'm going to knock out the the green, but I'm only going to use this on this layer. So I'm going to go like that, and then I am going to paint on that mask with a regular brush right here. And let's see if I can do this. Oops, a little far. So if I don't go too far into the beard, you can see that I make this a little smaller. See how that's me masking out, and then I'll press X. It's a little red. See, it's a little red here. See, you can see that that's the edge that it's working on. That's the adjustment layer. So I'm just pulling it out, and here this is troubling me a little bit. Here it's a little bit green. So I'm going to go back in. Paint. So I'm painting with black. Let's check it out. I want to check out the mask. It looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Okay, so I've refined the edge of the mask. Initially, the mask that I made looks like that. The refined edge makes the mask look like, and I will press to reveal that mask. Okay, and then the green edge is disappearing because I'm just using a color balance just on the edge right there, so I can hardly see the changes, but that's because the background color is white, and if I want to change it to that yellow or whatever, I can change it. And you can see the flyway hair is revealed, right? We also have a little bit of fixing to do right in here, and remember I said, you know, to me it just seems really difficult to get at this area. I'm just going to darken it up. I mean, one solution is to darken it up, or another solution is to maybe clone in some hair just right in here so it doesn't look as green. I don't know why. Maybe it's not bugging anyone else. It's bugging me though. So maybe I'll start with the healing brush and see what I can do. So I'm going to press Alt first, and I'm going to just pick up from here. Make sure I'm on the right layer. Press Alt on a Mac and Option on a Mac and Alt on a PC. So that means that I'm targeting an area. So I'm clicking on an area that I want to paint from, and then I'm painting or cloning in the stuff. And this kind of makes me think there's a little bald spot here, so I'm just going to clone in some hair here, clone in some darkness there. Looks pretty good. Okay, so now that is making a mask, refining the edge of the mask, and then if there are problem areas that are left uncontaminated or not decontaminated by the decontamination button, you can fix them by making an adjustment layer and targeting in only on the areas that you want that adjustment to work on. And that's it for the masking out the background on this fellow. So I'm going to go back to the PDF, and again, this is what Refine Edge, what it looked like previously. There was a Refine Edge button in the interface at the very top in the control bar once you make a selection. Now you have to make a mask to get to the Refine Edge because it's refining the edge inside of the mask. Okay, so here we go. This is what the Refine Edge looks like, the mask that has the refined edge, what it looks like as the mask itself. And here's the image on black, which looks great. And this is the image using decontaminate color. So in the previous version of Photoshop CC, it allows you to decontaminate the colors of the mask. So what that means is Photoshop goes in, understands that you're getting rid of a background that's full of green pixels, so it tries to decontaminate the area that is at the edge of the selection, and it's going to try and decontaminate the green from those pixels, from the hair pixels, pretty much. And here I'm going to go in and refine the mask more. Okay, so that means that once you have a mask created, you can go in and paint on it without double clicking and going into that Refine Edge mask mode. You can just simply click on a brush and select the mask and then paint on it, right? So I've option clicked on the mask to reveal it in the preview window, and remember that's Alt on a PC keyboard, option click on a Mac, and here is the old mask properties panel. So I'm just going to go back to Photoshop right now and double click here. So you can see that when you double click, you get into this this Refine Edge mask mode. I'm going to say okay. I don't want that extra one that was just made. Turn this guy back on. If you click once, you get the properties of the mask, density and feather. So I'll just show you what that does. So see the feathering of the mask, and this is refine, select and mask, or color range, or invert. Here's me inverting the mask. Here's using color range to refine. How cool does that look? And I'm going to go back in time one step, and then here is select and mask. So that's select and mask means refining the edge of the mask. Again, edge detection, smart radius at a higher number will help you refine the edge of the mask. The global refinements of smooth, feather, and contrast, and shift edge, I don't really use these for masks of flyaway hair so much, but you can certainly open that global refinement dialog box open or the drop down open and see if it'll help your mask. In this case it didn't help at all, as you saw. The output settings are new layer with layer mask. We do want to turn the decontaminate colors on, and it'll hopefully help by decontaminating the edge of the mask, where again Photoshop does a survey of what pixels were eliminated or masked out and understands that you don't want the edge of the mask to have that green in the hair, right? So it tries to turn all of the green pixels to a color that's nearby inside of the selection. So that's what decontaminate colors does. And then new layer with layer mask is the output that as soon as I say okay, it's going to give me a new layer of this gentleman and the mask associated with it, this new refined one. So I'm going to say okay, and you'll just see that another copy opened up, and we can see what that looks like. And it feels like it did a pretty good job. I do have some issues right here and a little bit right here, but it all depends on what color I'm going to be placing this person on and of course what else I'm going to be doing to the image. And you saw when we opened up this session that it's going to be a little bit kooky here. So we're not exactly going to be sitting in the realm of reality when we're compositing the trees and doing a multiple exposure. So the mask probably isn't going to matter all that much, but refining the edge of the mask and making things as perfect as you can is a really good idea when you're working with Photoshop. And here is the fellow on a different color. Okay, so going back to the PDF, I want to bring in another image, of course. So I'm going to look for something that is a little foresty, a little bit foreboding. So I've done another search for trees black, and I've opened up the size tools to make sure that my images are a little bit larger than 4 megapixels or 6 megapixels or maybe even bigger than that. And I'm going to use this image, the other image that I've supplied to you in the canvas, and I'm going to copy and paste it and bring it into my poster file. So I've opened it first and taken a look at it, and that is, of course, in Photoshop, the image drop-down menu. So here's the forest, and here is image and image size, just to take a look at how big it is. And it's huge! That's awesome! This is great! 20 by 13 at 300 dpi. All right, so I'm going to make a selection, and you can make a selection of anything. So if I press Command A and select everything, I can go to Edit, Copy, and then go to my image and paste it in. So Command V. And Photoshop is saying, are you sure you want to convert the colors to a destination document with a color profile that doesn't match the RGB working space? Sure, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that because this is an image that's going to be like we're using it for texture, we're using it for a little bit of like it's not clear to begin with anyway, so it's not it's okay to have it as converted inside of Photoshop. So you can see that I pasted the image in because my selection in the layer stack was the color fill layer. The pasted in image goes right above it, and it's below him with his mask. So that means you can see the trees in front of the burgundy background, but you can also see the fellow with the beard in front of the trees, which is pretty awesome. And of course, using a blend mode on the trees is going to reveal that burgundy background, you know, whatever kind of blend I want. If I don't want any blend at all, just make it normal. What else? Oh yeah, I wanted to say, like, you don't actually have to select everything on your image. You can actually select whatever you want to. So if I select this, Command Copy, go into the guy and paste, and it's going to paste in just what I have selected to bring in. So that's what I selected to bring in. Wild. Wild. So crazy. Not really. Okay, anyway, going back to the PDF. Let's go back to the PDF. So I'm using copy paste, and I'm pasting the image into the file, and Shift Command U desaturates the layers. So I'll go back. And that was and I don't need to do this. Shift Command U on a Mac desaturates the layers, but I think I like him in color. But in any case, I actually can show you that desaturation, hue and saturation as a adjustment layer. Saturation can desaturate. Oh, hello. Or saturate, right? Desaturate. That is one way to turn your image black and white. Another way, I'll drop that into the trash. Another way is to go to black and white. The black and white levels adjustment for red, right? Yellow, greens. So you have way more control here with that black and white adjustment layer. So you can see you can target areas and make this pure. Look at that. Wow. Hello. Magenta little squares. Wicked. That's a sweater. Okay. Let's see what this looks like with multiply. Wow. And take the opacity of that black and white down. So we've really darkened that guy up a bit. Okay, so that's masking, and it's also bringing in another layer, whether you are sliding the whole image into the background, or you are copy and pasting the image into the background behind an image that you have a mask on. And here I'm making duplicate layers of the trees by pressing Command J. So I've pressed Command J. I've also feathered the mask and inverted the one at the bottom with Command I. So that is 2 images of the fellow. The image at the bottom is duplicated, so you can see that it's revealing at the top. The mask is inverted by pressing Command I, or believe, I'm going to go back to Photoshop here. Go in here. It is window I. I'll go back in time. So that's inverting the mask. That's the Windows I. And you can see that mask is crazy. Doesn't look that great. Okay. And here I'm showing one layer off, or showing one layer is off, so that one is off because I clicked the layer visibility switch. So here, this is the image that I was working on for the PDF, and turning that eyeball off is turning the visibility of the layer off. Okay, and here I've got all my layers on, and I've got the trees kind of encroaching on the guy's face. I've got a copy of the trees, and I've rotated them upside down. So Command T is going to give me that. I'm going to get rid of this one, and Command J, and then Command T is going to give me the selection bar. You can see I've zoomed out quite a bit because this image is a lot bigger than his image. I go to the corner and I can press Shift and it will click into place. So it'll lock at 45-degree angle. Right here, click, 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 click. So I want it to be really upside down, press Enter. And now I've got a copy. So here's the one at the bottom, one at the top. And I want to reveal, so I'd like to have them both visible. And I'm going to press V for my selection tool. And like stagger the trees. Wow. And I'd like to show you something else. Right now, see where my cursor is? I'm clicking, but I'm selecting layer 2, right? So this is still selecting layer 2. If I turn on auto select and I click on pixels, see how layer 2 is selected? If I click on the gentleman's layer, he's selected now. So what auto select does is it allows you to use your cursor to make selections. So I can move him a little down or up, right? Reposition him. Oh my goodness, what's going on? So that's kind of fun. Because layer 2 is a full layer, it's not allowing me to select the original layer 2, the forest, because I'm actually using a blend mode. If I don't have the blend mode on, you can see that that layer 2 copy, it's the whole layer is filled with those pixels. So that's why the auto select doesn't work if I want to move these trees up and down, only when that layer is invisible. So if I wanted to move them up slightly and then move these down slightly and then go back to multiply, you can see they're now closer, right? So in essence, what I'm trying to say is that if there's a layer on top of another layer, even though I can see the pixels, I'm not able to use the auto select to select this layer because that one is blocking it. So I'm going to turn this off if I want to move that up and down. Neat. I'll go back to the PDF. Okay, so here I've turned one layer off and I'm using the multiply blend mode on the other tree layer. So here's the trees blending in with each other. And here I've pulled the bottom layer mask to the layer above. Wild! So there's a mask that was made which made the background behind the fellow invisible, right? And I'm going to use the mask that I made on the trees so that you can only see the trees inside of him. So let's get to work on that. So I might want to pull this mask down, but I want to copy it. So I'm pressing on my PC keyboard, Alt, and I'm click and pulling. So take a look at my cursor. There's two arrows there. That is, it means you're duplicating whatever you're selecting and pulling down. So it's making a copy of the mask. See how there's a copy of the mask? It's masking out what's beyond the head shape of the fellow, but the trees are below the fellow. On a Mac keyboard, if you press Option, click on the mask and pull, you'll make a copy. What I need to do right now, in order for the trees to be visible, I need to pull them on top of him. And you can also see that the tree layer is visible, right? But he's gone. So I'm gonna have to do some fancy footwork here and either multiply so you can see the trees, and I might actually, let's see, get a little lighter. Oh, what do I want to do here? I want to make this a little lighter, just for now. Here's the top trees. Oh yeah, that's the whole image. I just move the trees. I have to unlock the mask, and I want to just move the trees. So here I am moving the trees around. Oh yeah. It's a little sinister there. So really all that's going on is that a mask was made with the flyaway hair and the shape of the guy's head, the flyaway beard hair, the glasses, etc. And I've used the same mask that I'm using on the image of the person to mask out the background. I've duplicated the mask because I don't want to go in and make another mask, right? Like I would have to draw it on the tree layer. I want to duplicate it. So let's turn this one on and I'll just invert it. So Command I in on a Mac and Window I on a PC. And if you can't remember the key command, all you need to do is go to invert. So you can see the mask properties are here. So that means the mask's on the inside, or the mask is revealing what's on the inside. And here black is concealing where I don't want the image, you know, you can see that, how that mask is working. So that's kind of cool. go back to the PDF. So here I'm pulling the bottom layer's mask to the layer above, and then Option pulled a copy of that mask to the other tree layer. So press Option and pull to copy the mask to another layer. And if you click on the chain between the image and the mask, you can unlock the mask and move it separately. So right here, you can see that I've got the chain link disconnected. That means that I can move the trees or I can move the mask. They're not connected together. So I'll show you that again. Here is the link between these two. Click on the trees themselves. So you can see I'm moving the trees. Here I'm moving the mask. Whoa, goodbye, hello. Which is kind of cool. It's kind of interesting to see like the things that you can do. Whoa. Oh yeah. With masking in Photoshop. Okay, and here I'm repositioning the trees on one layer, so I'm just moving things around to make them kind of interesting. And here I've double-clicked the layer and the layer style panel has opened, and I'm going to use the blend if to break the handle in half and press Option and then slide it over. So I want to, on one of the tree layers, I'm just making some of his skin a little bit more visible. So I'll show you how to do that. Turn this guy on and click here, and I mean, you don't have to double click on the layer. You can go to FX and open it up, but you can double click on the layer too. So blending options, blend if I option click, you can see that I'm revealing see the little lines in his forehead shining through. So this is a little more sophisticated of a blend because the trees are dark. I don't want to lighten them up everywhere. I just want to reveal some of this little highlight that's happening on his forehead. So it's more like it's tattooed on his head, I guess, something like that. In any case, it's a little more of a subtle move. Darken, multiply, color burn. Here's where I can see, what effect might look better, the blending effect or the blending mode. And I can do that with this one too. Let's see. So you either double click to reveal that effects panel, or you can just go in and open it up and you can see it's the same thing, same deal. So again, option click or Windows on Alt click on a PC keyboard. And this is kind of blending. I guess it's not, it's kind of cool because of that crazy edge there that's going on. So that was the blend if. Let's see what color burn looks like. Whoa. Color not so good. Okay. Let's go back. So I've double clicked the layer to reveal that layer style panel, or you can just go to that drop down for effects. And here I'm adding a pattern overlay. Whoa, that's pretty interesting. And that's on that tree layer. So that's a pattern overlay. And here is an inner glow. Here is both of those layer styles that were added, inner glow and pattern overlay. And here you can select the layers and drag them to other layers if you want to. So select the layer style. So selecting, you can see that's not that interesting. You can also use blend modes on layers to change how the images are relating to each other. You can also use adjustment layers. So here's a curve adjustment layer. This is a levels adjustment. So all of those, wherever you stack them, that's what they're going to affect. So that's a levels adjustment, a curves adjustment. So here's the curves adjustment, and this is going to affect the, I guess, like everything below where you're at or where it shows up in the layer stack. So if I put it above or if I put it below, it's going to start affecting only some layers. So here the curves is just affecting the pink layer. Here it's not affecting really anything. Here it's going to affect everything below it. And it's kind of, that word esoteric is coming to mind. I mean, I'm not doing anything that is based in reality, I suppose, so it's really up to you when you're making something that's a little out there to decide what you want it to look like, what kind of style you're dealing with. Okay, so using levels adjustments, using a whole bunch of different adjustment layers for color, etc. If you want to target just one layer with your adjustment layer, so you can see that this levels adjustment, it's got the little arrow right here. It's saying that means that the levels adjustment is only working on the layer below, so that's that tree layer right there, and that's on your keyboard. If you press on a PC, if you press Alt, see that the black and white is affecting only that layer. And it's not black and white per se, I've used multiply, but here's now black and white, and I'll that off. So you can see it's at 45%. So here's full on black and white. Here is the adjustment layer only working on the tree layer. Doesn't really do much. Take that target out, and here we go. And here is a quick way of making a mask. Zoom out a little bit. Quick way, make a mask on a layer, bring in another image, and option click to lock it to the layer below. So this image, if it's locked to the layer below, that means that that image is what's going to be used by the mask. Cool, eh? So make a mask on a layer, bring in another image, and option click, or I believe it's alt click on my keyboard that I'm using today. So let's do that. Let's make a copy of this. Oh, no, I think I'm going to go to Forest, deselect, Command A to select all, Command copy, and then turn these guys off. Go here, Command V for paste, and then that in there. So that is the trees being masked, tree image, using the mask. Okay, so here, move these guys up and fill his head with the trees. Because this doesn't have a mask attached to it, I'm simply just moving the trees around. What is happening inside of him? And if I like this, you can see both. Whoa. Something's happening. I think I'm in True Detective. So if you haven't seen True Detective, that is a television show. I believe it's an HBO show. You can find it on Crave. That title design is multiple exposure, and it looks strikingly like this. I think they were copying me. Just kidding. Say okay to that. I'm going to go to a Safari window, and I'm going to go to, just so you can see this, I'm going to go to the art of the title. So this multiple exposure class has been brought to you by True Detective with Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. I don't think I say his name right. I'm going to look up True Detective. And I'm just going to show you a just a little bit of the title design. So these types of images, these multiple exposures, are so compelling. They're so interesting. So we've got multiple images, what looks like a multiple exposure happening, and this is something that is being used in After Effects, like title design for film titles for this television show. It's multiple exposures, it's masking, it's two or more images that are, in this case, I mean, they're moving images, right? We can do this stuff in Photoshop on our still images. So this is a lot of masked out areas and another image is revealed through the mask. So that's the inspiration for this class, is the images that you see that are kind of this multiple exposure image. And it's awesome. The photographer who came up with this image, I can't actually remember the person's name. I believe it's in somewhere in the Art of the Title website, refers to the photographer that started making this like quite a new old inspiration. So we've seen multiple exposures before, but this kind of black and white industrial kind of scene with I guess portrait photography was copied by the title designers of True Detective. And if you want to learn more about how they made the title design and how they decided on which images to use and what they were thinking about, the Art of the Title is a really great website, and it goes into all of the I guess processes, more or less. They open up the files and they show you, how they did the layer compositing and, what kind of programs they use to do the live action editing. So that's like Art of the Title. So that's like my inspiration for today is the title design of True Detective, but we're making still images, not moving images. So the rest of the PDF goes into that. So it goes into, I have to go back to my canvas. Oh, I don't want to go to Canvas, I want to go to this PDF. So the rest of the PDF, it talks about, it goes into more of like me moving the layers around and going to the file menu and merging layers and adding a layer mask and kind of working on that composite, right, with the masking. Here are some examples of still photography and some of the screenshots of the title design from True Detective. So this True Detective title design has been inspirational for now still photographers. Again, I mean, we've seen multiple exposures in the past. It's just when True Detective came out, and it's such a good show. The first season is great. The titles are amazing. The titles have inspired a whole new set of artists to do this kind of multiple exposure, and illustrators as well. So I've got some cool examples here. So here are some movie posters that use this multiple exposure style. Some photographers using that style. So you got the multiple exposure with the mask and masking out the areas. There's multiple exposure. Here's another film title. I mean, sorry, not film title, film poster using the multiple exposure with masking. Here we have illustration using the masking idea with another bunch of images slid in. So these are real photos and then painted illustrations. Here's the Jungle Book using the kind of masked image approach. So it's illustration, painting. So kind of cool. So it's a mask, what looks like a mask, and then another image is slid into the shape. Okay, so back to my poster. So here's my poster, and I'm going to add some text to it because it's supposed to be a movie poster, or a celebration of something, or maybe it's going to be a theater poster, or maybe it's even a book cover. I'm going to add some text. So clicking and dragging out a type area box, typing in the type that I want the title to be, or the film title, the movie title, or sorry, the book title, and then going to the drop-down menu and on the fly selecting another typeface, which I just love. And then I'm going to go skew the type. So edit, transform, and you can see all of the transform tools that are available to us to not only rotate text, but I mean we can rotate images too. So you make a selection of something and then go to edit, transform, and in this case skew gives me some handles that I can use, and I can click and drag around the control handles for the text and skew it. So here I'm skewing, but not really legible, and I'm adding a color overlay to the text. So here I'm going to go back to Photoshop and do just that. I'm going to grab my type tool, and it's going to be the regular type tool. I'm going to click and drag and type in shady characters. And if your type area box isn't large enough, or your text is too large, make the text area box larger, or Command A to select all of your text and make the text smaller. So here I'll just make it, let's make it that size for now. And again, I have my type tool selected. I can put my cursor inside the box, and I can go to the drop down for the text, and you can see it should change. Oops. There we go. So I don't need my type tool inside of the box. I don't need to click and drag it in. See how it's not changing? That's because my cursor is inside. I just simply select the type layer, so make sure it's active, select the type tool, and then click, and you can see the characters or the typefaces changing. Wow. Ooh. Ooh. Maybe I'll use Birch. Okay. And then of course, edit, transform, skew. So here you can see my type area box is a little bit big. I might want to make that smaller. Make it smaller here. It'll just be easier to manipulate. Okay. Transform and skew. So as you can see, skewing, we don't want it to be too not legible. Does that make sense? Too not legible. We want it to be legible. I want to be able to read this. Okay, so that's skewing the text. And of course, there are a bunch of others. So scale, rotate, warp, distort perspective, rotate, flip horizontal, flip vertical. That's exactly what it says. Oh, here we are. It's upside down. I can't read it now. I don't want to do that, so I'll just press Enter and then Command Z to go back in time. So now we're going to go back to the PDF. So an overlay, as I said in an earlier class, an overlay is the fastest way that I can find for changing the color of a layer, or in this case the text layer. So a color overlay can be accessed either by clicking and dragging down to color overlay, or simply double clicking on the layer itself, and it's going to give you that whole dialog box. Here's color overlay, and because my layer is below a black and white, I can't see the color pink, so here it is. And color overlay, if I don't like the color and I want to update to a new color, go in and on the fly go, okay, I'm going to change this color and see what works best with the design. Say okay and go back to my PDF. So here I'm using color overlay. and here I'll click on the name of the style to get the option, and trying out different colors and different effects like the stroke around, which looks pretty great. And here is a different color on the stroke, and so you can see the stroke is pretty big on this one, and I don't know if it'll work with this text, but I'm going to double click to reveal, and then the stroke, open up the stroke and change the color here. It is outside. I guess it's not too bad. The other typeface that I was using for the PDF, let's take a look at which one it is. Let me go back up a bit. So I am using, is it Courier? No, that's not Courier. What did I use? Not Didot. No. Okay, sorry about that. That's a serif typeface. The other one is sans serif typeface. I can still change the typeface, I believe, but yeah, you can see the stroke. Let's see if we can change the typeface. Let's go in and change it. Even though it is skewed, we can still change the typeface. So it hasn't rasterized the text. As long as you see the T, the text is still editable. I can change, all of the letters. This is Birch. Let's see what's going to look cool with that kind of bubbly. Oh, that's fun. Arial rounded. I never thought I would want to use that text, that typeface, but I do. It's a little bit big, so I can go in and change the size. Shady characters. So goofy. So goofy. Okay, so getting back to where we were. Using the color overlay, using another effect, the stroke. So I've added a stroke. The stroke can be see-through. The stroke can have a blend mode on it as well. So here I am picking a color, and if you see this exclamation point, that means that it's out of range for the web. So that means that it's going to buzz in a weird way, but it's probably not out of range for print. Here I'm adding a drop shadow, and the drop shadow, it looks really a little bit grainy because there is, where is it here? Right here, noise. So noise was added, so that's awesome too. So I'll go back into Photoshop and show you that. So that's under effects. So again, if you click and go to drop shadow, the drop shadow layer style will be revealed. But if you double click on this layer, it will open up all of them anyway as well. So you either go to effects and open it up, or just simply double clicking, making sure that you don't double click on the letters of the name of the layer. That will just allow you to change the name of the layer. You have to click somewhere off to the side. In any case, noise, drop shadow, noise. So here we are with adding a drop shadow, and this one is going to be, what color do I want to make it? Do I want to make it a different color? Let's see. Let's see. There's the shadow. Here's the size. I can make it look a little like the letters. And spread. There we go. and that's kind of fun. So again, a drop shadow doesn't necessarily need to be black. It doesn't need to be in the most default configuration of, like, you know, directly off to the left. You can change the angle of it however you want it to go. This kind of light dispersion or noise will you know, make it not really a drop shadow. It's just adding kind of this interesting thing to the text that you have. Distance is how far away the shadow is going to be. Spread is how I guess it's not really how big it is, but how much that shadow disperses, and then the size is how big it is. Ta-da! And of course, it's on these characters. So if I make the size smaller and I move this around a little, you can see, hopefully you're able to see it. So here they are. So the drop shadow is it's the shape of the letters. It's not the shape of the stroke that's around the letters. So we'll put it back. We'll put it back inside, and we'll just make it bigger, a little bit bigger. Say, okay, so we're gonna end soon. So that's adding a drop shadow with noise, and if necessary, you can use the transform option to resize the glyphs and the effects. Command T, and Command T will allow you to make the text bigger or smaller. So this is on the text, Command T. So here I am making the text larger, and you can see if I don't press Shift, right, the characters are going to skew out of proportion. So I'm going to put that back, and I'm going to press Shift while I do this. See how they are staying in proportion, or the aspect ratio of the width and height. And if I press Enter, and I don't like the change, Command Z, Command T, and pressing Shift, making the text smaller and larger. And you would think, even if I skew it, like if I skew it out of proportion and I press Enter, it still is text. So that means that I can go back in and click and drag over and change the words. Party guy. Or change the typeface to whatever I think is going to work a little better or worse. Oh no, this is turning out to be awful looking. Party guy. Oh my goodness, what am I doing? Okay, so go back in. And you can also use the type tool to change the spelling and or typeface. So I find this fantastic because I've skewed the text, I've added all sorts of weird effects to the text, and I've even skewed it out of proportion, and Photoshop is still recognizing it as type. That means that I can change the character, change the spelling, uppercase, lowercase, do whatever I need to do. So that is really a great thing about Photoshop. If I were to, I think in Illustrator, if I skew text out of proportion, if I pop it into a perspective grid and I start turning it into 3D and do all sorts of things, I think at some point it turns into shapes, it turns into paths, and it won't let me change the spelling or the typeface when in Photoshop. When you do a whole bunch of weird effects to your text, you can still change the typeface. So here, shady characters in this really cool gothic typeface. Here I'm adding a yellow scrim with a layer mask to kind of make the text stand out and have a little space for the text. So this is always a good idea when you have text on top of an image and you're finding, well, maybe you can read it because you're the one designing it. If you show it to another person and have them discern whether the text is legible enough or not, and they're telling you, I can't really read it because it's on top of an image, please make a little area box for the text. So it's always a good idea to make sure that the text is legible when you're putting text on top of something. And one way to do this is to add a like a scrim between the text and the image. So if I were to do that, I mean, this is pretty legible to begin with, the party on top of the fellow, but I'll just show you how you can do this. So I'm gonna grab the rectangle tool and make a big rectangle, and then I'm going to, that's a selection, and then I'm gonna make a solid color layer, and the solid color layer comes with a mask that is the shape of the selection that I made, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to drop it behind the text. Wow, so nice little scrim behind there. And of course, if the colors aren't working very well, you can go in after you've created the color layer and go in and start changing the colors. And of course, I can do that with the text too. My color overlay, if I don't want orange anymore, I want something that works a little bit better with my party theme. There. And of course, Command T, here is the mask getting bigger. So I've selected the color fill. The color fill isn't getting bigger, it's the mask that's getting bigger, and then enter. And going back, I'm adding a halftone dot pattern to my poster. So that is to the image. So I want to make sure that you kind of use smart filters instead of destructively using filters on images. So in this case, I've duplicated my layer with the fellow and the layer mask, duplicated it, and when you use smart filters, you're able to edit the filter in, in case you want to, I guess, make changes to it. I'm going to turn this off. I'm gonna one off here. Just gonna get rid of these guys for a sec here. Okay. So let's say I wanted to use halftone dots on this image, for example. Command J, I've made a copy of the bottom layer. I'm going to go to Filter and Pixelate Color Halftone. Okay, so you can see that I've completely ignored Convert for Smart Filters for this one time. Color Halftone, or you can choose any of the other filters. So here's Color Halftone, 8. Maximum radius is 22, I believe. That's going to be really big. So let's go to 12 and say OK. So here we have the color halftones applied to the image. The mask is now letting you see the color halftones on the whole image of the guy. I'm pressing Shift to bring the mask back. And of course, this color halftone is not quite letting you see the fellow as clearly as I'd like, so maybe I'll either use screen or lighten or multiply, right? And I can take that opacity down a little bit, but I can't change the size of the dots right now because this isn't a smart filter. So I can change the visibility and the blend mode, but if I have the hankering to make these dots a little smaller, I can't do that. So I want to use the filters that I apply as smart filters because I want to be able to turn the filter on and off or do something to the filter, like maybe in this case make the dots bigger or smaller. And that's why I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'll go back in time. So I'm going to go back in time to when I just made that layer copy. So I went back in time. You go to Convert for Smart Filters. To enable re-editable smart filters, the selected layer will be converted into a smart object. And I want Photoshop to show me this again. So I'm just going to say, thank you for telling me. So now I've got this image and it's a smart object. So now when I go to any of the filters, whether it's a high pass, whether it's a pixelate or scratches or color halftone, the color halftone, so remember I said I wanted to make the dots smaller, so I'll just go to 8, say okay. Now that is a smart filter, so I can go into the halftone dots and blend them. So you can see I'm blending them. I can change the opacity here, say okay, and go, what if I want to change the size? I double click on halftone and go to 6 just to test that out. Enter to say okay. So now you can see that we've got the halftone dots on the image of the gentleman, and maybe even still they're a little bit too big. Double click, 4. So 4 is the smallest size that you can use. And sometimes the halftone dot pattern actually, brings a little bit of texture in, and gives that kind of newspaper feel that it was printed. Gives a little bit of visual interest. In any case, it's matching the graininess in the background. So that is, converting for smart filters means that I can edit the filter after I use it. So going in and going convert to smart filters, and then having this filter be editable. So here's the color halftone, and the smart filters are editable just by double clicking and going in and editing. And of course, if you find that one of the filters that you're using, or even an adjustment layer, is not necessary on the whole image, you can see that I've used the smart filter layer mask and I've painted away some of the smart filter. So be smart and make a movie poster with masks, type, and smart filters. And hopefully you'll be inspired by True Detective and images that are multiple exposure, whether you're painting or illustrating the images yourself and using masking techniques on your painted or illustrated images, whether you're using a combination of photography and illustration, it's up to you. And even hand-drawn text might be cool to kind of play around with. Okay, so that's going to be it for this session, and thanks for watching.